Welcome to another episode of Management Muse. I'm your host, Cindi Baldi, and this is my husband and co-host, Jeffrey Tumlin.
Yellow! Welcome to the podcast where we try to inspire better work performance. Thanks for listening.
Hey everyone, exciting news. I am here to unveil, ta-da, the Uncertainty Playbook. Written by Jeffrey Tumlin and Cindi Baldi, it's 14 strategies for work success in a chaotic world. We know that most people aren't very good with uncertainty, and so we combed through the research and ran some experiments in our own work and came up with these 14 strategies that we think could be really helpful for helping you all survive uncertainty and coming out on top. If you're interested in buying the book, it's available on our websites, managementmuse.com and ondemandleadership.com. You can get 20% off if you use the promo code Playbook20. That will get you 20% off and free shipping. So stop on by, and we're wishing you some good reading. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today on Management Muse. I'm your host, Cindi Baldi, and my co-host is Jeffrey Tumlin.
Yeah.
And today we are going to talk about
The spanking
of change.
the organizational change and why it's asymmetrical, because one of the reasons people resist organizational change is because all of the pain is immediate. And all of the payoff, if it comes a lot later. And so there's this asymmetry in change where, like, hey, all right, we're gonna redesign the way, whatever, a workflow. We work in a lot of healthcare organizations, and they have electronic medical records, or EMRs, which is basically the system that the organization and the healthcare providers use to keep track of the patients. If any of you are old enough to see doctors, you might know of my chart. That's the name of the
system that basically holds all of your data, and it helps you interact with the hospital.
Yeah, it's basically the platform that your medical record sits on in an organization.
And then it feeds both sides. So the customer gets to see their stuff, the patient gets to see their stuff, but also the doctors and the nurses see your stuff on the other side.
Yeah, and it connects to billing. And so that's how the organization gets paid. And probably once every 15 years, an organization will decide to change systems.
Oh, and it is a nightmare.
Right. Yeah, and so this is classic organizational change. We've had this. We're a healthcare system. We'll talk about a few different examples in this podcast, but every EMR, it's called a conversion, but that's just changing from one system to another, is wildly painful.
Look, imagine how much, if you are an Apple user or a PC user, and how much you hate it. Like, say you have an Apple phone.
Yeah.
And you are used to how that Apple phone works. And your spouse
This is
has a
my
Samsung.
Android, yo.
This is a true story.
My Android, nothing wrong with this. I get a hotspot anywhere in the world.
And it's true. It is way better at the hotspot than the Apple, in my experience. But every time I pick up his phone, I hate him and I hate Samsung. Because
sounds like an Apple user to me. A sanctimonious Apple user.
Oh, please. You don't like my Apple either. And that's the point. Like, that is very simple. I sit there and I'm like, where is the front photos? I can't get into the photos.
Right.
And, just something very simple. And it is that irritating. And I have zero interest in learning it. And now magnify that by a complexity of about 10,000.
Yeah. It's basically you go from Apple to Samsung or vice versa. And if you're on Google, you have to use Bing. And it's like everything you interface is different. If you're on Spotify, you have to go to Amazon Music. Like everything has to switch over. And so it's like,
and those are really
sure,
simple cases.
Very simple. Now imagine doing that with sick people.
And imagine doing that when you're used to living with the problems. And so like, you don't really see the good reason as an employee to switch over. But for whatever reason, like maybe another department is really struggling with this and they think this new system will be able to integrate that other department better. But that means everybody has to change for the whole organization.
Right.
Now imagine that level.
Yep.
Not only is it 10,000 times more complicated, but now you're not doing it because you're self-motivated,
yep,
because you only want to take one phone with you on a trip.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, we had a client, it's the Cindy's example. I mean, we could go on forever about this, but just to give a little.
We've had many, many clients.
Many.
Yeah.
Just with this one kind of org change, because it's anybody who's listening to this, who's had anything to do with healthcare has probably been through a conversion. Most companies only do one, in our experience, about every 15 years or so. But
technology changes.
Yeah, there's usually a gigantic reason, but the whole company may not feel it. So we had one of our clients change the system because their reporting they needed to do for grants, which were making up an increasing part of their budget, they couldn't do on their existing system. And so it put the whole company in jeopardy. We're having to piecemeal together these grants. We're having to add staff. Whereas if we had a different EHR, the reporting for these grants, which, as I mentioned, we're making up more and more of this company's budget, it will be automatic. But that doesn't help the average doctor. Like, well, why am I having to switch? And the lab didn't want to switch because there was a problem with the new company. They could do very well on grants, but they couldn't do a good job with the lab. And so there's all of this tremendous angst gets kicked up. And the problem is the pain is going to happen immediately. It's going to be basically a year and a half to convert. You pick a day when you flip the switch, but it takes 10 months before. I'm making these numbers up, but it's basically, call it 9 months before and 9 months after. It takes 9 months to get ready. And then it takes 9 months after where you're actually using both systems. There's a period of time where you use both systems as you're trying to get this new system built up. And it's just adding a gargantuan amount of work and pain and punishment. And all of that's happening right now. And we're not going to get any payoff for this until
years down the line. I mean, like
a year later.
At least a year later. I mean, at least, because you got to get it integrated for like the grant part to actually really work well.
Yeah.
And so, it's questionable whether or not the people on the front line really recognize the importance of the grants to what they're doing, because they're on the front line and they're actually the ones who are bringing in the patients.
Yeah. And so this is a giant embedded problem of organizational change. Is your people who you need to implement this are going to see all of the pain up front, and they're smart enough to know the payoff isn't coming until way down the line, and it may not even come.
Or it may be in a way where they don't even recognize that it's come.
Yeah. So you have to do a series of things. I mean, we've advised on this for so long that there's just kind of a checklist. So we'll go through some of the things. And the first is we usually try to avoid buzzwords, but this buzzword actually works, and it's called quick wins. And so you're looking for what are the things we can do to bring forward some of the rewards, or at least some of these victories, and show a little bit earlier how this is actually working.
I think we've done this in a variety of ways. We've done it with communication networks where if it's a change
that people aren't incredibly excited about. Like you can have different kinds of change. You can have change where everybody recognizes it's a problem and they're ecstatic that the organization is going to take care of it. And then you can have change that basically is put upon you, usually by the government, some regulation.
Or competitive force.
Or, somehow it's put upon you.
Yeah.
And everybody recognizes it's put upon you and you have no choice.
Yeah.
And then you have changes that are like what we're talking about, where they're more complicated, where because it's an organization with different parts, one group, it might actually be better for the whole organization as a whole, but some people, their lives are going to get worse. And
yeah, that's true.
Or they just can't see maybe things get better, but they're not sold that things are going to get better. Like it's not a clear home run like the first time. And so depending on what kind of change you have, you may roll it out differently. And so if it's change that where everybody's ecstatic, well, it's hard to disrupt an entire organization. You're probably, to the degree that you can, depending on the change, you're probably better off using like what we do as a communication network. We look for the most influential group. And that is where the change starts, when it's one that everybody wants, because all eyes will be on it. Yeah. And then the communication is just flowing in and out of that group.
Yeah.
And the feedback's very fast and it will spread very fast to the organization.
Yeah.
If it's a change that you don't know how it's going to, like people just don't know how they feel about it, or there's there needs to be more of a sales job around it.
Or you're worried it's going to have a little harsher setup. Might be a little jerky.
Then you're, to the extent that you can, you're doing the opposite, where you're looking at the communication networks in the organization.
Yeah.
And you're choosing the more isolated groups.
Yep.
Because you can run the experiment there with pretty low visibility, and you figure out a lot of the problems that are happening there. Learn, go to the next group. Hopefully it's an easier implementation. And so you get better at the implementation of it and figuring out working through the problems.
We had a guy who did this brilliantly. A friend of ours ran a fire department, and the fire department had an airport, and basically the airport station, so imagine fire department of 7 stations. Of the 7, they're all in different parts of town, but one of the 7 is an airport. And the airport is weird. It only serves the airport and never leaves the airport. So it's completely...
It's a big deal if something actually is going on at the airport.
Yeah, but it's basically completely isolated from all the other... And so every weird thing he wanted to do, he'd try it over at the airport. And if it crapped out at the airport, he never would bring it anywhere else. But if they liked it at the airport and they thought it was a good idea, he'd work the kinks out and then bring it into the rest of and that's what Cindy's saying, that sometimes you have parts of your organization where it's a little safer to try stuff. We still work at an organization that's basically located in one geographical region. And then they have this one satellite clinic and it's 3 hours away. And so there's all these places that are within 30 minutes of each other, and then this one satellite 3 hours away. And so you can try wacky stuff out there, and it's not going to
it gives you a chance to perfect whatever change you're trying to implement.
Yeah.
So that's...
And then the opposite is true too, like Cindy said. And so a lot of these conversions where they're successful, they pick the trainers, which are often called super users. They'll sometimes pick them straight off of Cindy's report for the most influential people. Now, they won't necessarily pick the most computer savvy. They pick the people who are most connected in the organization. And then they basically, through the early training with them, it's a gamble, but they're trying to make the case for this is a good system. It's simple to learn. And then they're doing that with the people who are the informal leaders in the organization, highly influential.
They're going to be the ones who are helping anyway. They're the people who others call when they
And
don't
say,
know how
what
to
do you
do
think
something.
about this? Yeah.
And so if you
Yeah.
can figure out the problems with them,
Yeah.
where they know how to use it,
Yeah.
then they can actually help train everybody else up on that.
Yeah. Yeah. That point that Cindy's making, it sounds a little nuanced because it is, but we have used this for probably 10 years, maybe more.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe 15. And it's wildly effective of basically trying to figure out where can I go if I think this is going to have a lot of kinks to work out that isn't going to ripple all the way through my system. Where's an outline group that I could try it on? And then if I think I need a lot of support and I need it early, who are my most connected people? And let me make my case early on to get them involved and have them be the spreaders of this particular change. And that's, I've always liked in conversion that name of super user, because it's basically, it's your critical mass of people who are going to help the whole organization do this very difficult thing.
Right. Because you still need to hire the trainers and you still need to have the classes, and especially if it's technology change. But, that's all formal. You show up for a class and sometimes you just know you learned how to do something, but you've forgotten how to do it. And you're going to turn to your own personal network and be like, hey, how do I do this again?
Yeah.
And so you need to make sure that those people who others turn to for the, hey, how do I do this thing again? Or I can't figure it out, that those people are actually very good at doing it.
Yep. I agree with that. Yeah. I have another one. If you're,
go ahead.
Is you have to actually identify the parts of the organization that may have the most trouble and get a hit team devoted to solving those problems. And so I gave the example earlier on about in the healthcare medical records conversion, we worked at a place where the lab didn't like the system, and they had huge complaints, and they had a lot of reasons why, and they had a lot of other cases. And so this organization actually built a carve out for the lab. And it was the only carve out, and the EHR system didn't want them doing it, but they did it anyway. They overruled the system, and it took a lot of extra work. But in that instance, it was the way to actually get that part of the organization, get them to agree to the big change. Not that you couldn't force it, but
they had a point.
They had a great point.
So, all the problems with technology change that's coming out of a box is it's coming out of a box, and it's not going to be a perfect fit.
Yep.
And so you're basically trying to implement it, and then in the areas where it's a really poor fit, you're paying the extra money for the customization to be able, for that group to be able to function for real. And there's that should be part of the expectation going in, because the product is literally developed for any organization, but all organizations are a little bit different.
Yeah. This is the central problem of organizational change, is that your people are very busy. And so where's the time going to come for this? And they're trained to see problems because we've hired a bunch of good problem solvers, and all the problems are going to be immediately visible. And the payoffs, if they come, are in the future. And there's a little bit of uncertainty whether we can actually pull off the outcomes and get the positive rewards that we think we're going to get.
Yeah. And to some degree, I mean, the reason why we like the experimentation is because no matter how much planning you do, you never know what it's going to look like until you're knee deep in it.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Run
the pilot.
Right. On a smaller note, right? I've talked a lot about my family's driving, and there's a lot that's been going on with it this year. And so I have been working since February to basically put the ticketing online.
Yeah. Cindy's family owns the drive-in movie theater. And so she's been helping, basically, I guess you would call it organizational reinvention.
Yes. And the drive-in is just one piece of it. And so the drive-in, I wanted to upgrade the technology for a long time in terms of like the ticketing and the parking situation. And that's in process.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I couldn't anticipate, like I bought these plugins to go onto our website, and I bought them specifically because they had certain attributions that worked well with a drive-in. But I no sooner plug it in and get people buying tickets, then it becomes very clear that they're not working as described. And you can't know that. Like I did my due diligence. I've asked the questions. It's in the promotion material. Like, you can't know that it's not going to work. And the drive-in is one of those businesses that doesn't fit. There's a category of drive-ins, but we're so small. It's like 250 organizations across the country that nothing caters to us. Like, no templates, the prefab templates back when web design was a template. Nothing caters to a drive-in. And so I did this thing with the ticketing, and I couldn't know the problems that I was going to have. And that's just a small case. It's like the iPhone, Samsung example. It's just a small example that you can do a lot of due diligence. And the reason why we like the experimentation is because it gives you the chance to get knee deep in what you're doing and actually try out the technology and find all the ways that it does not run exactly as you think it's going to run.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good example. That's a good reminder.
Hello, Musers. Now it's time for commercial break.
Talk about change advising. We advise all the time on organizational change. It's a lot of fun. The problems are significant, but the rewards are big as well. And so give us a call.
And I think we like the challenge of it.
Yeah, sure. We like to work at the top of our license. So if you got a big change you're thinking about making, we'll help you do it with less blood in the streets. We've been doing it for a long time. It's a lot of fun. High risk, high reward, but we enjoy it. Call us ondemandleadership.com, ondemandleadership.com, and we'll help you walk through your organizational change. One of the challenges of the conversion electronic medical records is you have to go all at once. You flip a switch, but that's manifestly not how a lot of organizational change is. A lot of it you can do in pieces.
Right.
And it's a much better model if you can do it, because everything, I would say probably more accurate. It's that terrible phrase, it depends. Sometimes you need to do a full Monty all at once, but there's a lot of
pre-stuff that can be done.
Yeah.
Like we've seen with the organizations, they do a lot of just even research on trying to decide which one. And then once you decide which one, like you can start bringing people in advance for the training.
Right. But that has a particular day where you flip the switch and you're now activating a new system. But a lot of like the change you're doing with the drive-in, you don't have to have, there's deadlines. There's a certain date where the moves start, but you can pick the pieces that the first thing we're doing is making sure the movies can play. Second thing we're doing is we're going to upgrade the ticket system, change the way we're doing the ticket. The next thing we're going to do is whatever. And you could do it in pieces. Does that sound plausible? That's more of a...
Well, yes, but even with that, right? Like I flipped the switch for the ticketing, but we can't give up taking cash. Actually, that's illegal in New Hampshire. We have to take cash.
Good. It's illegal in New Hampshire to not go
cashless. Yep.
Really?
Yeah. The organizations that pull it off have a device where you feed your money into a machine and it spits out a card with so much money on it.
Yeah.
And then you can use that
Right.
to pay, but we cannot go all credit card. We cannot go all online.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, it's another. It reminds me of analogy to what we're talking about. Of the United States is 50 states, and there's a lot of experimentation within the states. Like this is an example of, every other state that I'm aware of, and I'm sure there are others, but they do allow cash. But I get it. New Hampshire's a little different, and
Live free or die, baby.
yeah, it experiments, and then depending on, is that a good idea? That gets rolled out in other places or not. And that's one of the things that I think you could argue, challenges notwithstanding, makes the United States, it's the one that strikes at the system, is that there's a lot of implementation down at the state.
There's a lot of experimentation that's happening for various reasons.
Yeah. And that's a piece of what we're recommending. Basically, your people aren't stupid. They're going to see all the pitfalls and problems and punishments that are right front and center with the change effort. And our job is to make sure that we're trying to communicate why this needs to be done, get as many quick wins as we can, be smart about how we roll it out. Can we use some of the more influential parts to get them involved early? Or do we want to do a pilot in a place that's a little more isolated? And then we're looking for constant obstacles. It's like the guy who wrote, I forget what it's called, Meditation for Mortals, Oliver Burkeman. And one of his subsequent books has a line that you and I like a lot, which is, the problems are the job. And so organizational change is going to throw up a handful of big problems. And instead of thinking of problems as, I can't believe I got to do this, it's terrible, think of it instead as, well, that's the job. Or as you sometimes say, this is the jigsaw that I'm uniquely positioned, or I'm here at this moment in time in this company to help resolve. And
I mean, and again, like the classic changing from a problem mindset to a challenge mindset. I mean, I am much more motivated over the idea. Like I wouldn't say that like I want problems.
Right.
Like I would love an easy rollout because then I can go work on something else. But when they happen, there is a level of excitement that's like, okay, how do I get around this?
Yeah.
Or how do I like, there's a level of learning and creativity that's embedded in that I find exciting. And I think if you have that mindset of challenge instead of problem, I mean, the research indicates that, right? Yeah. That can help you get through that instead of just feeling like you're always getting punched in the gut.
Yeah.
It's, this thing. And so like, gonna wind up talking about the driving a lot because like we're in the middle of a big transformation.
Yeah, it's kind of front and center in your mind.
Well, and it's this topic, right? So like we've only done the iceberg, at the very tip of the iceberg. Yeah. Very initial stages. And so like last night I was talking to my brother and I'm like, I think we should put 2 screens down in the front because it's a huge theater otherwise. And it's a tighter use of the property. Now, that has not been approved. That's just conceptual. And we may change our mind on that. But it's like this, like we're talking about different problems with like, when you only have one screen and it's a holiday and you have a bum movie, that's like wiping you out. And so, our drive-in has had historically 4 theaters, but the property, that's a lot of property that's being used for a drive-in that only operates very small portion of the year. And so we're trying to figure out better ways to utilize it. And so we're talking about that. And like, that's a lesson, right? Like from this experimentation that we've been doing this year, that's a potential lesson that we've learned. And there's value in that. There's like, there have been all sorts of hurdles, but, and maybe the success wasn't defined the way that we wanted it to be defined, but even just that one insight that's success, because that changes potentially how we do things rolling forward. That makes it a more stable business.
Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah, there's one other thing I wanted to mention from our experience, and it's we were first alerted to this by years ago, I think, some of the work or the groundbreaking work on organizational change by John Cotter at Harvard.
I like that stuff.
Yeah, and some of his work about the different steps organizations go through when they're making a change. He pointed out something that we see a lot, and it's worth mentioning, is a lot of times when you do everything right with your rollout of the change, and you have people begin to absorb some of the inevitable punishment, and you're trying to get the quick wins and you build momentum and critical mass and all these things that we've been talking about the last few minutes. There's a tendency for, as soon as there's been a little bit of victory and success, to declare victory.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of like Desert Storm.
Well,
think that.
Yeah, that's an example of the mission accomplished banner that was at the aircraft carrier with George Bush, and that happens in organizations with some frequency because it's been a period of time, usually months. There's been a lot of work. It's been grueling. There's been problems. You've had to get the buy-in. People are beginning to get a little tired, and then you have some successes. And so there's a tendency to say, okay, we're good. And people want that. They want to be good.
They want the relief.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. And so you have to do what a long time ago we used to call in the Army running through the hill. Is you can't just get to the top. You have to actually kind of imagine in your mind that you're running through it so that you get far enough to the other side so that metaphorically you've got the momentum to keep going. And that's something to be alert for. We do want to try to program in victories and milestones and celebrate successes.
But not to the point where we think it's concluded.
That's right. Yeah. And that may mean, depending on the scale of what you're doing, that the people who got you to that initial point aren't the people who take you the rest of the way.
Oh, that's very true.
Yeah. Like I forget the study, but in political science, they study the length of tenure of cabinet positions, like, the senior positions in a presidential term. And the length of time is something like 3 years, 2 to 3 years.
Which is probably too long.
Yeah, because those jobs are so incredibly hard and stressful that you just you almost can't make it, right? There is one of our mentors, Howard Prince, used to argue that you could still term limit American presidents to 2 terms, but you have to make them sit out and go on vacation for 4 years. You can't do 8. You can't do 4 and 4. You have to take a break.
It's interesting because we're sort of having that play out right now, right? And I can see the logic in that. It gives you some time to take the break and also some time to contemplate.
Yeah. With the idea being that for things that are, it's like crime. We've talked at a length here about my dad, and he had Alzheimer's. So that, took my mom for 6 years through basically being the primary caregiver of my dad. And there were some steady people who helped because you actually need
vacation.
Yeah. And time where if something's been ongoing and grueling for a long period of time, your group 1 people leading that may not be the same people who keep that up on the other side. And you may have to.
There's also, I think, and where I thought you were going with that, I think it's valid what you're saying just about exhaustion. But I think also potentially the different stages require different skills.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I don't dispute that.
And that might be another reason why you want to change people out.
Yeah, Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a very, it's like the upside down U that often accompanies the relationship between group tenure and group effectiveness, right? Where it takes a little bit of time, usually in the months, for a group to kind of get to know each other and start clicking. But then there's a period of time where they've been together too long. And so either the things that annoy them start irritating them, or they really start liking each other and start to believe their own cooking, and they pull their punches and they're not getting feedback. And so the performance drops.
True.
And so it's this idea there's a sweet spot of, especially if something is grueling. This topic is near and dear to our hearts because it's a lot of work that we do in companies. Like a lot of the companies that we're in, is your point that you made before, is basically companies, because of the pain of change, they'll wait until the wolf is at the door. And then there's a big lurch. And we're often brought in during the lurch where a bunch of stuff is happening all at once, like the movie, the one that Academy Award, Everything Everywhere All at Once. And, there's a cost to that. And it shows up in a lot of ways in the people and organizations. And, there's a cost to chronic situations, chronic change, like what my dad went through with his Alzheimer's and the impact that had on my mom. There's a cost to you trying to do a business transformation, like we talked about in New Hampshire. And our job is, specifically my job and your job, is to try to take a combination of what the science tells us about organizational change, whether that's John Carter or the other great book we liked. It's called The Art and Science or Leadership in the Art of Change by Leroy Beach. And there are many others in this kind of literature on change. O'Toole is another one, I think James O'Toole. But there's a lot of great science about how to change an organization, and then lay on top of that the experiences that we've seen and try to help people make necessary adjustments, sometimes necessary transformations, with the minimum amount of collateral damage. But usually there's pain and damage and punishments and spankings, and they're all visible early.
They tend to happen early. I mean, it's fun to do transformation when some of the stuff starts clicking into piece, because even if it's been a lot of pain, as soon as things start to come into place, even with a whole bunch of it still out of whack, like the vision starts to become more legitimate. And so then all the pain that you went through feels like, okay, that was legitimate. But it was good. I had to get through this pain to shape what we become. So I think that, as you've mentioned, that's one of the big challenges, is just trying to hold people together while you're getting to that side. I think there are two other things that I would bring up, and it's really about pace, because we are always waiting probably until the wolf is at the door. Oftentimes the pace of change, for like the breadth of the change, it's throwing everybody out of whack, where like the beauty of an organization or any group on pretty much any level, creativity, decision-making, change, any of that, is that we don't all have to be doing the same thing at the same time.
Right.
And we're able to put multiple resources of people together to build this thing that's greater than the individuals. And if we can remember that with how we're structuring change, and then it's, change is disruptive and expensive. Hopefully it has a payoff on the other side. And because it's disruptive and expensive, like we try to move very fast. And I think it causes us to have unrealistic expectations. And I'm just as guilty as anybody. And so you have to try to set realistic expectations on timelines, because if you keep missing the timelines, that's also fatiguing. Like,
Sure.
And it erodes your legitimacy.
Yeah.
And we've seen a number of leaders who, and again, like, this is hard.
Yeah.
And so I'm not criticizing, but like, probably want to put a buffer in there beyond what you think on a timeline, because every time a timeline goes by that everybody's there, well, like, we don't know what we're doing, or it's not going to happen. And so it's very disillusioning. And then I think the big error that we have seen with some of the CEOs that we're around, work with, so forth, is trying to change too much. Like, the list is too long. And sometimes, like we were talking about earlier with the EHR system, sometimes you can't help it. You have to have like this dual thing going on.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time you can. But because you have this list of changes that have to happen to get you to a particular vision. And they're all important. But people can't be changing in multiple ways all at the same time. Yeah. Like, they just don't have the focus for it. They're going to get exhausted far earlier from it. And it complicates, like, okay, if I have to do all this change and all these different domains, and there's a problem, and there's always a problem, there's always an obstacle that we didn't see. Yeah. Then which one do I pay attention to? Yeah. And so you have to step back and give a much smaller bites of change to the people in the organization.
Yep. Makes sense. That's a good summary. All the pain in org change comes early. It's one of the main reasons why people resist it, that in their memory of the ghost of change is past. And our job is to try to help smooth that out through pulling a lot of the levers that we talked about. In so doing, it's helping people believe in the rewards, the reason, the worth of the effort, so that they'll take on some of the punishments, which inevitably are very easy to see, and they keep popping up along the way.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Management Muse. We are a podcast / YouTube channel that we hope is entertaining and educational. If you are on YouTube, we would appreciate you subscribing and maybe leaving a comment and a like. If you are on any of the podcasts listening to this, we would appreciate stars, following, comments, all the good stuff. We want to say thank you to Christina, Sarah, and Rebecca, and then, of course, everybody at Design at Work. And then, just as a last-minute reminder, we also want to mention that we are management and communication professionals working in the field, but also have degrees that back us in science. All that being said, we are talking in generalities on this podcast. We do not actually know your particular situation. So proceed with common sense and maybe a little bit of experimentation on your end. And we hope that you make the world a more beautiful place by making work a more enjoyable place. See you next time on Management Muse.